Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back with another how-to. Today we're going to be doing the front hub on this 2007 Buick Lacrosse. Now this should fall in line with any first-gen Lacrosse, which is 2005 to 2009, so let's get into it now. Alright, so we're here on the passenger side. I have the vehicle on jack stands and also still have it retained with a jack on the center just for safe measures. And if you want to see how to get this safely on jack stands, I do have a video that I'll leave in the description below. So if you want to safely get this on jack stands for the front to complete this job, check that video out. So let's get into the job. Now the first thing you want to do is determine that the wheel bearing is actually your issue before you go replacing it. Make sure that is your problem so that you're accurately replacing the correct part. Now, an easy way to tell if you have a bad wheel bearing is simply grabbing the wheel right here at the top and moving it. This should be super stiff. It should not move at all. So like it almost should bounce you back, but if you can hear it moving. I'm trying to get this on camera. It's moving slightly. You got the littlest bit of play. Alright, so the issue with this car is it's having a lot of noise and feeling from this front wheel here. It's got more than one issue. The tire is really deformed. I don't know if I can catch this on camera for you, but it's almost ramped, like it's slanted down. You can see it's creating some really bad wear here on the outer edge. So this tire needs to be replaced immediately after this job is done, and I'm not sure if that's what gave us our bad wheel bearing or if the wheel bearing caused this tire to go bad. Could even be unrelated, but you know, that's the issue with this car, and that's how I've, you know, determined what's wrong. You know, we had a noise, seemed like it was, you know, driving coming from this side, put it in the air, looked at it, noticed the tire immediately, and then started grabbing around on suspension and you know, the wheel here. And this is how you can tell you got a bad wheel bearing. I'm grabbing it from the wheel and it's got play. You can almost see it moving away from the caliper bracket there. I put a little bit of light there. But yes, if you got play, that play right there, that's a bad wheel bearing, wheel hubs. So that's how you determine you have a bad wheel bearing. We obviously have a bad wheel bearing here on the passenger side. So let's go ahead and get into replacing it. All right guys, first step, we're gonna go ahead and remove the wheel. 19 mil, got a 19 mil in the impact. We're gonna go ahead and fire all 5 of these 19 mil lug nuts off. All right guys, so wheel is off. Now the first thing I like to do if you already have the part is determine the part you have is correct. So I have the part here. All right, so here's a new part right here. You can align it with the wheel studs. Yep, look good, so that's on point. You can turn it, make sure that inner part is the same size, looks good, and you can also compare the harness to the harness. So this looks correct. It is a DriveWorks hub. I got this from Advanced. It's NT513179. So that is the new hub that we will be installing here. So it's time to get down to getting this thing apart. The first thing I'm going to do is remove the axle nut. Now the axle nut is a 34 millimeter. I'm going to go ahead and fire that off, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so 34 mil. I got a 34 mil on an impact. Honestly, if you don't have an impact, you're probably going to want to get one or borrow one or something. This is by far the most easy and efficient way to break an axle nut. So and that's why. No effort involved at all. Not sitting there for half an hour jumping on a breaker bar. None of that. So there we go guys. Axle nut is off. So now what we need to do is expose the hub, and we can do that by removing the brakes. So the brake caliper, the bracket, and the rotor to expose the hub. So let's go ahead and get into disassembling the brakes. All right, so I have this vehicle with the front end in the air. As I mentioned, both of the front sides are on jack stands, as you can see right here in the left corner. And when you do that, it gives you the ability to turn the wheel. So as long as the wheel isn't locked, take your hands and turn the wheel all the way to the car's right, turning it towards you. As you can see, the angle of the knuckle and the brakes, so that gives us better access to fit in here to get our caliper and caliper bracket bolts. Okay, so I'm going to be using an impact. With the impact, you definitely want a lot of space, obviously, to gain access, and even if you're using a ratchet, you know, you'll have a clear shot at getting right to this. So turn the wheel, give yourself better room to work, and now we're going to go ahead and remove our caliper. All right, guys, so our brake caliper bolts right there, they are a 15 mil. So I have a 15 mil on an impact. Fire these right out. All right, guys, need a little extension to get around this brake hose, but 15 mil right out. All right, so we got both of our caliper pins out now, and now we can pull these out. Put these to the side here, and we should be able to slide off the front caliper here. See, I'm moving it with just one hand. About to release it. All right, pulled that right off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hang it right here on the strut body itself. That way you can see I'm moving it, hitting it, it's not moving. So as long as we don't move the body here around, this should be fine resting where it's at right now. So got both of the pins out. We can go ahead and pull our pads now. So just gently remove your pads. One. This one right here is going to come out with the bracket. If I remember correctly, there's not a lot of playroom to push this front one out. So yeah, we're going to leave that in. That's fine. We're going to go ahead and remove our bracket, and we're going to pull the bracket off in its entirety. So the bracket is 2 bolts as well, 15 mil as well. So we're going to remove both of those 15 mils and pull our whole bracket off. All right, so 15 mil here on our caliper bracket bolts. One. Back your last one off a hair so you can remove it and not let this fall, because it's free once you take out both of the bolts. So there we go. Got our bracket off with the pads. Actually freed up our rotor. The rotor sometimes might be rust welded on. So if it's rust welded, you could take a rubber mallet, especially if you're trying to save this. You want to, you know, not damage it. So a rubber mallet would be a great solution. You could hit around the body of the rotor. If it's not already free like this, and it should free it up and allow you to pull it right off. So we got this one free. Go ahead and pull it off, and look, now we have the hub exposed. So we got our full hub exposed, and now we can go ahead and address removing the hub. All right, so we now have our 3 hub mounting bolts exposed. Those 3 right there, almost in a triangle. Now, it is in my experience that hub retaining bolts to the spindle or the knuckle are usually pretty rust welded in there and need a little persuasion to help get out. Now, I'm also in the Northeast, so that definitely doesn't help my case whenever I do a hub. So in this case, what I like to do is I do like to help persuade hub mounting bolts with a little heat. So I'm going to take a propane torch and lightly heat each one of these up. I'm going to do them individually, and then we're going to fire it out. So I'm going to start with this bottom one right here, which if you look, it is easily accessed right there. They are 13 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and start by heating this up with a torch a bit, and then we're going to fire that 13 mil hub mounting bolt right out. All right, guys, got the torch going here. Now keep in mind, you want to keep it away from anything that it could potentially damage. Obviously rubber, wires, anything of that nature. Keep it away. Seems like a lot of people are afraid of using torches, and I mean, if you go in any real shop, especially in the Northeast, they're using torches, and it's usually acetylene, not even a propane torch. I mean, this is a mild, you know, heating for something of this nature, which is perfect. So, you know, I'll probably do this for about a minute maybe, and then once I get this a little warm, we're going to fire that out with an impact. All right, so we let that heat up for about a minute. Got my 13 mil here on an impact. Try to guide it in. Should be able to get this out. Let's see. Yep, right out. And just a little heat helps make sure that thing will fire right out. So now I'm going to work on the middle one. The middle one, I might not be able to squeeze an impact in there. I'll see if I can. If not, I'll just be using a socket wrench, but I'm going to do the same thing. Heat that up for a second, and then we'll fire that out. All right, so I heated up that middle top one for a second there. The easiest way I found, really, I mean, my impact sockets are pretty thick, and although I could probably sneak an impact in here with this socket and an adapter, I think it's easier just for the safety of the axle boot to just go ahead with a socket wrench. So got this 3/8 drive on there and got it loose, so that's good. Got that with no obstruction from the axle boot, so get this back in here. I could probably back it off by hand. Yep, you saw that disappear. Because I'm backing it on out of there. And don't want to touch it because it's definitely going to be warm. But there we go. There it is. So both of those are out. Okay, so now we got to get to this back one here. Now what I want to do is I want to turn this the opposite way. So I'm going to turn our wheel this way. Just make sure if you're doing this and you already have the caliper and everything up here and oriented as I do, hold the caliper so it doesn't fall while you're turning this. So I want to do that. Just turn the wheel the opposite way, and then we're going to approach that last third mounting bolt. All right, guys, so as you can see, I got this turned now, so I have better access to our last bolt. Now what I want to do first, because we got to do this anyway, is I'm pushing in each side tab of this wire harness clip. So if you saw, just pressed one, pulled it, pressed the other side, pulled it out, and now we have our wiring harness out because this is almost obstructing the angle of where the socket wrench or socket's going to go in. So I want to move this safely out of the way. We're going to move this back over here. So I just got the harness pushed out of my way. Okay, so harness is out and not further obstructing our bolt right here. So I'm going to hit that one with a little heat as I did with the other two. Just do it for about 45 seconds to a minute, and then we're going to fire that last mounting bolt out. All right, so I have our third and final mounting bolt heated up, and I have enough room here to sneak my impact in for this one. So there we go. You can see it's actually coming off. What are the chances? So a lot of times for me, especially here in the Northeast, when I do hub bearings or wheel hubs, whatever you want to call them, they are rust welded. I mean, rust welded on there. You got to beat them off with a sledgehammer, and you might actually need a slide hammer tool. So it looks like we're good. This mounting bolt has freed this up, and I can just pull this hub right out. So as soon as I got that last one out, look at that. We're completely free. So I'm going to go ahead and escort this off real quick. Put the camera down. Hopefully it's not a terrible angle for you guys there, but see, the wire harness feeds through the knuckle, which is pretty butt, to be honest, because the axle is almost obstructing it from coming out. So it looks like that's going to be our hardest hang up here in this job. But I'm going to push the axle back a hair. I hope you can see that. And I should be able to sneak this out here. So let me see. Yep. Hit the camera, but sorry about that, guys. But yeah, what I did was I pushed this back so it gave me enough space to sneak that wire harness right through where it was coming out on the actual hole of the knuckle here. So got the bolt still in there. Can pull that out now. So there is our hub. Our hub is completely off. That was really simple, to be honest. And what I'm going to do is show you guys what I was planning on doing if the hub was actually rust welded. And if you encounter that, it might help you get an idea of what's needed to be done. So we'll review that now. All right, so I'm just going to briefly review some options that you can do if by any chance your hub didn't come off like how this did in the video when we released the 3 mounting bolts. It just started to fall out and come off. If yours is stuck, rust welded, or anything like that, I'll give you some insight what you could do to remove it. First thing, I would just try to lightly give it some hammer taps around it. So if it's stuck, sometimes I just need a little bit of persuasion. You can just take a hammer, hit around the back of the body. So you would like hit here. Sometimes if you even have an angle, you can get in here and just hit around it, and that might escort it right out. If that doesn't help, what you could do is get a slide hammer. So AutoZone actually rents these, and I'll show you because I actually have one on hand. This is a OEM tool slide hammer. 27033 was a part number. This is the 57033. So what this does is it threads onto the body of the hammer and essentially gives you the pull to work something off. So what you would do is you would take this mount, bring it to the car. All right, now if this was still on, obviously this would go around your wheel studs, and then you would put the lug nuts on this, and when that body of the slide hammer is threaded in, you would pull the slide hammer, and this would pull this all off. So you can see this forms right to the lug pattern essentially, and you could just slide this on, put your lug nuts on, and then take the slide hammer and pull it right out. So these are 62 bucks at my local AutoZone to rent. That's how much it costs. If you want to rent one of these, you can also buy it for that price. Totally up to you. You can probably find it on Amazon for cheaper, but if you want to own the tool, that is the slide hammer. You would put it on and it would slide and, you know, pull that thing right out. So that would be a couple suggestions that I have if you're having trouble removing the hub from the actual knuckle. All right, so we're ready to install our new hub. Now I did wipe the mating surface there down a little bit, wipe the inner part down just with a little bit of brake cleaner on a paper towel, wiped it out, blew it out just to give ourselves a little bit more of a clean, you know, start to this bearing being seated and put in. So I got the new bearing here. We already reviewed that. That is the DriveWorks bearing from Advanced, as you can see. Looks identical. Harness is the same. Even has the same white harness on it and the blue backing to it. So it's pretty legit. Now, one thing we're going to need is to pull off this bracket here and put this bracket onto the new hub. So that is the retaining bracket right there for the harness. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get this lined up, and we're going to feed the wiring harness right back through the knuckle hole as it was, and we're going to get that pushed through, and then we'll go ahead and start getting our hub you know, bolted up, torque to spec, and get everything back together. So let's go ahead and get this new hub on. All right, guys, so to make recording and getting this recorded while I'm doing it a little bit easier, I've already put the wire through the knuckle. So keep in mind the wire is going to come through right here on this side. So if you can see where we have it oriented, you want your bracket oriented like this, wire right there. So hopefully you can see the wire right there. Okay, so it should be almost in relation between this bolt and this bolt. So in between this bolt and this bolt is where you want your wire. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start getting this aligned on the splines. I hope. There we go, got it. So I got it on the spline. So now we'll make sure that our bracket is oriented correctly, which now it is, and we can push it right in just like that. Okay, so we got to make sure our wire has the room to press back in. So the wire should be pressed in like that. So the wire was coming down. It's where we want it. And I'm going to start, I think on this outer side, I think it's going to be the easiest way to get the first bolt in. Even though we're turned the opposite way, I think I have better vision and access with getting that one on. So let's see, I got it pressed in. I'm grabbing, yeah, 100% in. So I'm going to pull that in. And then we're going to do the opposing side. So yeah, you can see I don't even have to fight it anymore. And in fact, since I have that one mounting bolt in, I'm going to go ahead and start our axle nut. So I'm just going to spin that on a hair. Let's get it about flush with the end of the axle threads, just to help retain it. All right, so that's on. We're going to get all this torqued once we got everything in. So that's good. I'm going to take this bolt now. We're going to go to the bottom, our left here. So let me see if I can find our hole and threads on this side. Got the wire fighting me here, but we didn't plug it fully up yet, so I just did that to make sure we can get it oriented correctly before we bother getting this threaded back in. So I think I got that one started. So I got both opposing sides started. So this one and this one are started. I'm going to go ahead and finger thread those in reasonably tight, and I'll give myself a little bit of playroom for this top one. So I'm going to get both of those finger tight, and then we're going to turn the wheel this way, and we'll get the top one in because there's not a lot of room from this side. So we'll turn the wheel back that way to finish off and get our third and final top bolt in. All right, so if you can see, I got both sides there in there finger tight. So we got those help, you know, pull that thing in. Now I got the wheel turned back the opposing way. I should have the room to go ahead and fight this bolt into the top there. It's gonna be tight, I ain't gonna lie. Yep, you almost gotta press it up. See how it's got play? You want to press it up so you can get it in, because it's a super tight fit on this top bolt. So I'm just inching this top one in with my finger, and then we'll get all these torqued to spec. All right, guys, so if you can see, I got all three pulled in nice and tight, finger tight. So we're gonna go ahead and get these torqued to spec. Now the torque spec for these 3 hub mounting bolts is 96 foot-pounds. So I got my torque wrench locked in, 96 foot-pounds. Let's go ahead and get these locked in. All right, since we're already turned this way, I'm gonna go ahead and start with this one right here. So let's go ahead and get this one locked in to 96 here. All right, guys, there we go. 96 foot-pounds. So I'm going to do the same thing for the other 2. I'm going to jump to this top one, do the bottom one, lock all 3, 96 foot-pounds, and then we'll get back into the reassembly. All right, guys, so we got all 3 of our hub mounting bolts, 13 mils, torqued to 96 foot-pounds. So they're all torqued in. As you know, I already got this harness mounted here onto its retaining tab on that clamp. I'm just going to take the wire harness going into the car side, of course, and we're going to snap that back into the harness. Make sure that tab goes right over the clicks in on it. So that's fully retained now. So that's all installed. Okay, so now we can go ahead and get into reassembling the brakes. You know, our hub is good. You can feel it's nice and tight. You know what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to seat this axle nut right now. So I'm going to fire it in a little further with an impact. And then actually I probably just do it by hand here. And then we're going to torque this thing last. So let's go ahead and get this thing as tight as we can get it here. Alright guys, so I got that nice and pulled in, and we'll get that torqued in as our last step here. So now we can go ahead and get to the reassembly of the brakes. All right guys, we're gonna go ahead and get to the reassembly of our brakes here. So I'm gonna grab our rotor. We're gonna just slide it right back over the wheel studs here. All right, let's get that bad boy aligned. And then just gonna put a lug nut on here to retain the rotor and keep it nice and tight and straight for when we're reassembling our brakes, and it won't be flexing on us. So all right, so let's go ahead and get this thing tight, nice and tight. Now our rotor is nice and stiff, got it centered. We don't have to worry about it falling apart on us while we're putting everything back together. So now that we got our rotor on, we can go ahead and grab our bracket, and we can go ahead and slide that back over the rotor and get that mounted up. All right guys, so I have our bracket here. Make sure you get this front pad, the pad towards you, installed before sliding this over. Okay. Let me fix the camera angle here. I got holding this with my knees right now, so not the best method to get a good camera angle, but we got this slid back over. I'm just going to start one of our 15 mil bracket bolts here. Just going to feel it out. Got that one. Alright, I got the top one started. I'm going to go ahead and get the bottom. And the bottom is in. So I'm going to go ahead and snug those finger tight on our bracket bolts, and then we'll torque those to spec. Alright, so we got our two 15 mil caliper brackets. They're both finger tight, so I'm going to go ahead and torque them to spec. Now the torque spec is 133 foot-pounds. So I already double checked this bottom one should be locked in. Yep. Let's get this top one locked in here. Torque wrench is a little tight up against that strut bolt, but we got it. There we go. There we go. Alright, so both 15 mil caliper bolts now torqued. Alright, so now that we got both of our caliper bracket bolts torqued in, we're going to go ahead and get our pad. So I'd recommend putting a little bit of pad grease. You can put a little bit on the contact points here on each edge. You can slide it right back into your bracket here. Should slide into your clamps. We got that front one in already when we put the bracket back on, so that one's good. Let's get this rear one in here. There we go. Alright, so both of the pads now locked in. And we also want to put a little bit of caliper pad grease around the piston. So put a little bit on the piston edge here, as well on the edges here, just to give a good contact point when we slide this over. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of grease on there, and then we're going to go ahead and slide our caliper back over our pads. Alright, so I got a little bit of pad grease around our piston and on our contact points on the caliper itself. Also wipe down our caliper slide pins here And as you can see, I re-greased them. They're actually pretty good, but I redid them anyway. But let's go ahead. We're going to grab the caliper. Just be careful of your boots because they aren't supported right now. They're just hanging out of the bracket essentially. So just be careful with that. And you might have to navigate them and arrange them a little bit just to get them back snug between the caliper and the bracket, which I got the top one working on the bottom one now. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and slide our pins back in. So start with the top one, and the one with the rubber boot is gonna go on the bottom. All right, so top one here. Got that one started off, it's grabbing. And we got the one with the rubber boot. This one is going on the bottom. And there we go, got that one started off as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these finger tight, and then we're gonna torque both of these 15 mils of spec. All right guys, I got the caliper slide pins here, are 15 mils. They're back in, tight, finger tight. Now the torque spec for these two bolts is 70 foot-pounds. So go ahead, lock this bottom one in first here. A little bit better access. All right, that's good. And then I'm gonna get an extension for that top one to work around that brake hose. So I got a little extension here, should be able to sneak on by it. Yep, and then we'll go ahead and get this one locked in as well. There we go. So both of our 15 mils are now locked in to 70 foot-pounds. So our whole brake system is completely reinstalled. This is all done, guys. Essentially, the last thing we got to do is lock in our axle nut. So we'll go ahead and do that now, and I'll review the torque spec for it. All right, guys, last step here. We're just going to go ahead and lock our axle nut in. So remember, it's a 34 mil. Got a 34 mil here on an impact. I'm going to snug it up first. Yeah, I'm already pretty close right there. Just finger tighten it. So it's about snug. And the torque spec for the 34 mil axle nut is 118 foot-pounds. Okay, so lock my torque wrench in, 118 foot-pounds. We're going to go ahead and get that torque to spec. All right, so locked in, 118. Let's go ahead and get this thing torque to spec. Now, if you notice, it's going to spin if you do it just like that. All right, now what we're going to do is I'm going to take a pry bar and I'm going to put it between the lug nuts and pin it into the floor, so that way it's not going to spin, and we can go ahead and get this torque to spec. Or if you have a partner, you could always have them press on the brake. That would be helpful as well, so to, you know, prevent this from spinning. So you can have somebody press on the brake or do what I'm going to show you, and then you can get this locked in. All right, guys, so here is the setup to torque the axle nuts. So as you can see, I have a reasonably sized pry bar. I just got it laying up against the lug nut, or I just got it laying up against the wheel stud. You want to be careful because you don't want it to damage anything. And I have my foot on the other end. It'd be smarter if you're on the passenger side to have it going this way, vice versa on the driver's side. So got it locked in. I already gave it a turn, should be right there. Yep, there it is. So got it locked in. As you can see, we're not moving just because I have this locked in with the pry bar. So this is fully installed and now fully torqued to spec. So you can go ahead and pull your pry bar out, give it a spin, make sure you don't hear any noises, make sure everything feels good. You can pull on the hub itself, make sure you don't have any play, especially if yours had play prior. You should know what it feels like. You should be able to determine if yours is tight, as this is right here. So I got no play. This is nice and tight, dialed in, nice and sound. So I hope this helped with doing the front hub bearing on your 2005 to 2009 Buick Lacrosse. Make sure you stay tuned because you never know when I might be wrenching on this thing again. And until next time, guys.